All right, how's it going, guys? My name's John Khanna. I'm the Director of Education here at Edwin's, and today we are talking bourbon. So, in front of you see our selection for the dinner, but what is bourbon? So, bourbon is a distilled spirit made in the United States, 51% corn, aged in an oak barrel for at least 2 years. And, that's the basics of it. But what is it really? Like, why do we love bourbon? Why do we drink bourbon? What do we love about it? And it comes down to a number of different things, but it comes down to just having fun with a really interesting spirit and trying different things. So let's talk a little bit about Weller in particular, and we'll talk a little bit about how it makes it different from other bourbons. So Weller is a wheated bourbon, meaning that outside of the corn, the primary ingredient to the mash bill is going to be wheat. You could have wheat, rye, barley, oats, all those different things, but the main two you're going to see are rye or wheat. In the case of most bourbons, you're going to see kind of combination of the wheat and the rye. But if you like a sweeter style bourbon, think Maker's Mark, you're going to see more of the wheat in it, like these Wellers. The other real famous wheated bourbon is going to be the Pappy Van Winkle series. So we've all heard of it before. That's a wheated bourbon, and it actually comes from the same distillery that the Weller's made at. So a lot of people say this is kind of like your baby Pappy. It has a lot of the same flavor points and a lot of the same kind of technique used in making it. So what we have here is kind of their standard series, going from the Special Reserve, the Antique, the Weller Full Proof, and then their 12-year age. All these are different expressions of basically starting with this one here, the Weller Special Reserve. So this is your standard mash bill. This is aged in oak barrels, and it is aged to a lower proof. And they do that just to make it very approachable, easy drinking. You take a step up to the Weller Antique. This is also known as the 107, because of its 107 proof. So higher alcohol content, a little spicier, a little stronger. You then progress here to the full proof. So full proof is going to kind of refer to coming out of the barrel at a very high strength, very full alcohol level. Typically, when you hear the word full proof, you're looking at 125 or more proof. And then last but not least, they're taking this and they're doing a 12-year age. So the longer you age it, the sweeter it becomes. You kind of get rid of some of the tannins that are there or mellow them out, and you end up with a really nice, sweet, rich bourbon. A great way to finish this event off. So for this event, we're going to be kind of taking a progression and going through all these, pairing it with food, and just having a really good time. When we do these events, we do this, they're not only just to have fun and drink good bourbon, but they're educational as well. So we mentioned that, most bourbon comes from Kentucky. It doesn't have to, though. Though Kentucky really wants all bourbon to come from Kentucky, bourbon could really come from anywhere in the United States. Even as far as here in Cleveland, we have a couple bourbons made here. But the history of bourbon dates back to Kentucky, and it has to do with something very specific, the branch water. So when you make bourbon, you take your corn, you make a distillate out of it. Think beer. You take that distillate and you take that fermented beer and you distill it. And what you come out with is corn whiskey or corn liquor. It's very high proof. It's Everclear-esque. And you need to dilute it down. We need to kind of bring that down to a very approachable alcohol content. And we do that by adding water. And what makes Kentucky bourbon better than most, in some opinion, is the water they use to dilute it down in. So they typically use branch water, so coming from well water, that's high in limestone. And that limestone is going to give Kentucky bourbon its distinct flavor that you can't really find anywhere else in the country. So when you think of bourbon, you're thinking of that kind of limestone undertone from that branch water they're using to distill it with or dilute it with. So if you look at a label real quickly, we're going to talk about a couple things on a label. So when you go to a store, you know what you're doing. So let's take a look at these two labels here. So typically there's a couple things you're going to see. So at the very bottom here, you're going to see Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. So that's a really important term because If you see Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey, it's going to come from basically the best region in Kentucky for making bourbon, the Bardstown area. We actually were fortunate enough to take the class down for a trip to the Bardstown area. So we took 40 of our students down, and we went through Bullet Distillery and really got a chance to see how everything was made. But that Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey is something you want to search for if you're in the mood for a really good Kentucky style whiskey. Now you may also see straight bourbon whiskey. You may see bourbon whiskey. You might even just see Kentucky bourbon whiskey, and all of those things play a role in proof, location, and content. If you look closely too, it will say the original wheated bourbon on the Weller. Most, though, do not tell you their mash bill. So you're going to kind of have to figure it out for yourself, or dig into the internet to find out what the mash bill is and what you like. I would say when you're looking at bourbon and things like that, it just depends on what you really like. You know, do you like something that's a little sweeter? Then you're going to want to head for the kind of wheat style bourbons like the Wellers, like the Makers, like Larceny is another example of that. Or do you like the high rye bourbon, something that has a little more spice, a little more body to it? You could think like the Knob Creeks, the Bullets. Those are going to have more rye to them, and then therefore be a little spicier, a little stronger. They also really help in determining what you're going to do with the bourbon. So, you know, most people drink it a number of different ways, from neat to on the rocks to having it in a cocktail such as an old fashioned or a Manhattan. And, you know, what we say and what we typically talk about is the higher the proof sometimes is more likely to work better in a cocktail. So where you might take the Weller Special Reserve here and just sip on it neat because it's a little lower in proof, a little easier to drink. The Weller 107, because of its higher alcohol content, works really nicely in cocktails. You know, adding it to an old fashioned and balancing out the high alcohol content with a little sweetness really makes for a beautiful cocktail. And then, you know, if you're looking at an aged one, so if you want to go something a little longer in age, sometimes using something that doesn't kind of hide the bourbon itself, a Manhattan or something like that, that really focuses on giving you the bourbon as it tastes, is a good option. So looking at your proof and your style of whiskey is going to tell you a lot about the kind of cocktails you want to mix it. Now, there's no right or wrong way to drink bourbon, and we're not going to tell you how to drink it. You know, if you like it on the rocks with Coke or ginger ale, just enjoy it and have fun with it. You know, really drink it however you want to drink it. You know, there's no one's saying how you should drink it or what you should do with it. Enjoy it as you like anything else, whether it's neat on the rocks or with a splash of Coke in it. Because it's just meant to be have fun with. We're not here to be snobby or elitist or anything like that. We're here to have a good time, and that's kind of what we do here. So, you know, it's really about understanding what you're drinking and then figuring out how you like to drink it. For something like this, you're foolproof. What I recommend is when you first try this, try it a couple different ways. So take a sip of it with nothing. Just take a small sip, completely neat, nothing added to it. Then 2 drops of water. Just add 2 drops of water to it, and you're going to see the flavors come out. Because water is going to help open it up and give you this amazing depth of flavor and richness to it, just by kind of mellowing out that high alcohol content for just a moment. You know, then mix it in a cocktail or with a splash of ginger ale or something, and see what you do with it. And I'm telling you right now, people would yell at me for even mentioning mixing this with ginger ale or Coke or whatever that. But again, it's your choice. Have fun with it. Don't try to do something crazy. Don't listen to everyone else and say, oh, you can only have this on the rocks and you can only have it on the 3rd Thursday of the month. It's not that. It's when you want it. The one thing we don't want to do and be here is we want to share these products. You know, there's a lot of times people kind of grab these products and hold them and hide them in their back cabinet and don't want to share them with anybody or anything like that. Our goal here is to share everything we have with you and show you what good bourbon tastes like and what okay bourbon tastes like and what bad bourbon tastes like. Because there's a spot for everything. Let me tell you, out on a golf course, a bottle of bad bourbon does just as good as a bottle of good bourbon.